What is up, you guys? So we are back yet again. I know it's Monday. I know that I'm supposed to be uploading on Friday. Hell, this video might even go out on Tuesday. I don't know yet. I've had a really busy week. Work's been calling me in a lot. What with the Super Bowl and whatnot going on next Sunday. People getting ready early for some reason. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get on to the topic with this 8.5 generation or 8.5 generation, however you want to say it. I prefer the 8.5. So first we're going to start off with the PS4 Pro. Now this is the first one that entered into this generation, which it's so hard to call it a generation because we are talking about the 8th generation still. You know, it's still a PS4, it still plays PS4 games. But the PS4 Pro is the most lacking of all these 8.5 generation consoles. And it's so weird that it is because this is from Sony. They made the PS4, which was the most powerful during the 8th generation, which, again, we're still sort of in the 8th generation, but it's so hard to talk about this and not get confused. So yeah, and I mean, it's just so lacking in hardware, and honestly, this is probably the only 8.5 generation console that I'm not picking up. So there's my opinion on the PS4 Pro. But next we have the Xbox One Scorpio, and this is where it kind of gets weird whether it's still 8.5 generation or 9th generation, which is crazy that we're going back to a 4 to 5 year cycle, you know, in the year 2017, right after the 7th generation, which was 10 years long. Now granted, you paid $600 for the PS3 whenever it came out, but that $600 got you 10 years of enjoyment, whereas $400 that you just paid for an Xbox One whenever it came out got you 4. Because there's a bunch of different publishers saying that the Xbox One Scorpio feels like a 9th generation console, and I'm fine with that. That is my preferred method right now, is go into a new generation and leave the 8th generation behind. The 8th generation was a mistake from the get-go. You should have been charging $600, $700 out of the gate for the Xbox One and PS4. Let the early adopters go ahead and basically pay the R&D for the systems, so then all you're charging are resources to where you can get that price down to $400, $300 where people are actually going to buy it. And this is after they've seen the power. Like, it should have been the Xbox One Scorpio being released in 2013. It should never have been the Xbox One that we know now being released in 2013. I'm sorry for that tangent, but that's just how I feel about the 8th generation. It was terrible. It was garbage. There were no innovations. It was just, oh yeah, you remember that 360? Well, we're going to try to remake that. We're going to try to remake the 360. It was shit. The Xbox One compared to the 360 is utter garbage. And I hate to say it like that, but the 8th generation should have lasted 10 years as well. But we had the console developers that want to make it affordable for everybody. I wouldn't have bought it whenever it was $600, $700, but somebody would have. And they're the ones that would have paid for the R&D after the R&D has been, you know, made up for and possibly even profited from it. Then you go for the $300, $400 price range, and you have a killer system that will last you 10 years. But now I'm paying $400 for the Xbox One and $400, maybe even $500 for the Xbox One Scorpio whenever it comes out. That's $900 in the 8th generation, just so that I could have had the experience that I would have had if they had come out with the Xbox One Scorpio first. Again, sorry for that tangent, but it looks like we're entering into the 9th generation because the 8th generation was utter crap. And that is the best way to go about it, because if developers are still making games for the Xbox One, like, let's say that the Xbox One Scorpio comes out, and then Red Dead Redemption 2 comes out after that. Which version are they going to focus more on? They're going to focus more on the original version rather than the Xbox One Scorpio version. Like, they're going to focus more on, getting it ready for the Xbox One base model than the Scorpio, because that has a higher install base. And they're just splitting the market, so if you buy an Xbox One Scorpio, you're pretty much fucked. Alright? Until people start adopting the Xbox One Scorpio, you're going to be screwed out of your money. So I'm going to say wait 2 years on the Xbox One Scorpio if it is an 8.5 generation console. If they say that they're going into the 9th generation and they don't have to work on both the Xbox One base model and the Xbox One Scorpio, then you can buy it day one and you will have a pretty good investment. But if it works on if a game released on the Xbox One works on the Xbox One and the Xbox One Scorpio, stay away from the Scorpio, because developers are not going to waste their time making a better game for a console with a smaller install base. And moving on from that, I know that was a giant rant, and I would say I'm sorry, but that is my opinions. And it's going to happen if it is an 8.5 generation console. If it is a 9th, then you're good. It's fine. Next one up is Nintendo Switch. But Medic, you say, that is clearly a 9th generation console. It is moving away from the Wii U. It is moving away from the 3DS. It's a 9th generation console, Medic. What are you talking about? It is an 8.5 generation console. Look at the games that are coming out for it. Just look at them. You do have Breath of the Wild, which is also being released for the Wii U. You have Splatoon 2, which has a little bit more customization options and 2 more weapons that we know about, and maybe some new maps. That's not a new game. That is an expansion. So you basically have 2 of the same games right there. And then you have a game that's already been released on the Wii U coming out, being Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It is an 8.5 generation console at heart, and there's nothing that's going to change about that. It is not 9th gen. It has basically the same specs as the Wii U, from what I understand. Breath of the Wild runs great on both of them. Even has some lag on the Switch version that wasn't in the Wii U version, from what I understand from people who have played it. Don't quote me on this. But the Switch inherently is an 8.5 generation console masked as a new console generation. And they want you to pay for the games that you already have on the 8th generation console. I'm buying the Switch. I'm not saying that you should not buy the Switch. But if you have a Wii U, I would buy it during November whenever Super Mario Odyssey comes out. I would not waste my money for it whenever it launches in March. Because, like I've been saying, you're not going to be playing new games on it. Oh, but Splatoon 2, it has a 2 in the title. It doesn't matter. It is still Splatoon. More people are going to be playing Splatoon 1, because guess what? There are only 2 million Switches launching, and not every single person who buys a Switch is going to buy Splatoon 2. A vast majority will, because there's not going to be that many games on it in the first place. But Nintendo is releasing this 8.5 generation console, masking it as a 9th generation, but telling you to buy all the games again because, oh, it's 9th generation. You ever wondered why Reggie Fils-Aimé said that it's going to be released alongside the 3DS? Like, the 3DS isn't stopping. The Wii U is, but the 3DS isn't. Even though the 3DS is an 8th gen handheld. It's an 8.5 generation console. I recommend staying away from it until November, whenever you can actually get a good a new AAA game, should I say, because the games that they're releasing are not new. Breath of the Wild is new, but you can play that on a Wii U. So yeah, that's my thoughts about the Nintendo Switch. That's my thoughts about PS4 Pro, which is garbage. And that's my thoughts about the Scorpio. Honestly, we might as well just enter into a new generation of gaming. I hope that Xbox understands this, and I hope that they go ahead, they release the Xbox One Scorpio as the 9th gen, leave PlayStation behind, leave Nintendo behind, because they're going to have to make up for their mistakes. They should not be releasing 8.5 generation consoles, especially as weak as the Nintendo Switch and the PS4 Pro. That's just unacceptable. I mean, why would I even buy a console whenever, I have a PC? Why would anyone buy a console whenever they have a PC? PC is a much better investment because I know that if I spend $2,000 on a PC, it'll be good for 20 years. I say 20, it's probably more like 10 or 15. And that's if you spend $2,000, which is a massive amount of money to spend on a gaming PC. Because you could probably spend, I don't know, I spent $1,500 on my PC and it's still running games at, 1080p, 60 frames per second. That's what I want. But the best case scenario in this situation is Xbox One leaves behind PlayStation and Nintendo. PlayStation is still going to have to make up the R&D for the Pro, because I'm pretty sure that wasn't cheap, even though they didn't put much into it. And Nintendo's going to have to make up R&D for the Switch. And I think that they can do that, especially Nintendo. But honestly, they're going to have to make more consoles. Honestly, I thought that the whole thing with Amiibo being shorted out, and what else was on a shortage? I know like limited edition 3DSs are always on shortages. I thought that they were just planting the idea that, oh yeah, Nintendo doesn't make enough copies in people's heads, so that whenever the Nintendo Switch came out, people would be pre-ordering it like crazy, and then there would be enough for everybody, and it was just a marketing strategy. But I guess not. 2 million, that's pathetic. And I've gone off on a rant again because, I don't know, that's just what I do here. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts on the 8.5 generation are. Hopefully, again, I keep saying this, hopefully Xbox knows what they're doing. Hopefully they release a 9th generation console.